Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Wednesday, November the 5th. And welcome to our commentary. Well, I have a post over at the American Thinker this morning talking about last night's elections or yesterday's elections. And it's called Overreaction Wednesday. And for those of you who live in the North Texas area, you may remember that there was a sports writer, Randy Galloway, who was retired. And he used to do, a weeknight talk show here in the Dallas area. And as on the Cowboys would play, most of the time they play on Sunday, his sports show was called Overreaction Monday. And that's because there was always something to overreact to in the Cowboys game. So I call my post Overreaction Wednesday because I think there's been a lot of overreaction to what happened yesterday. So let's get into a little bit of details. Okay, let's get into details. The headline says the Democrats had a big night. Well, yeah, they won Virginia, they won New Jersey, they won New York. And I guess if you want to throw in what happened in California with the redistricting, they won that too. The question is, how many of those four were they supposed to win? And the answer is all of them. I mean, there wasn't really a Republican who was supposed to win anything. Now, there was a lot of talk about New Jersey, and I was guilty of that. I looked at some polls that said it was within the margin of error. And I said in a previous video that I thought that was going to be close. But it wasn't. Obviously, the polling data was wrong. That was a double-digit victory, which is usually a pretty big victory. So that turned out to be just bad polling. We just had wrong information about what was going to happen. So that went down. If you look, what's interesting to me is that if you look at the issues that are concerning to the people of New Jersey, property taxes, crime, that should have been a better Republican showing. But I understand. I was listening to someone this morning saying that there were many, many Republicans who just didn't show up. And they're saying that, that could be the Trump factor. Without Trump, Republicans are not going to show up. And that is perhaps the biggest negative of the night for the Republicans. Without Trump, you don't have the same turnout. And that's something they got to work on because Trump is likely not going to be on any other ballots. I mean, he is indirectly, he will be in 26, of course, and to some extent in 28, but he himself is not going to be on the ballot anymore. So we got to get over that. We got to figure out some way of getting those people out to vote. And apparently in New Jersey, that was a problem. So that's a negative for the Republicans. That's something they're going to have to work on. Now, if you go to Virginia, 3 out of the 4 went down as I expected. The one that I thought could be different was the Attorney General's race. And that's primarily because of the Democrat candidate and these tweets that he put out about violence and so on. I mean, those were pretty bad tweets, or texts or whatever he sent out. And I'm kind of surprised that didn't hurt him more. Honestly, it's hard for me to believe that many Democrats didn't care about that, but they didn't. So we ended up with I think it was 53-46 victory. That's not a landslide, but that's a good victory. That's a good victory. So Virginia went, the Republicans went 0 for 4, or the Democrats went 4 for 4. But again, they were supposed to win all of those races. The only one that had a chance, you might say, was the Attorney General. And that was because the Democrat candidate was such a weak candidate, or a candidate with a scandal past. So that went down. Virginia and New Jersey kind of went down. If I had said to you 6 months ago that the Democrats are going to win Virginia and win New Jersey, I don't think that would have been a controversial prediction to make. And that's what happened. The other one, of course, was New York City. And as I mentioned in my post today, that's the one that everybody's going to be talking about. Nobody's going to remember New Jersey or Virginia in 2 days, in 48 hours. It'll be gone. It's history. Nobody's going to care about it. At least nobody outside of those 2 states. I mean, people in those states will care about it, but the other 48 states, nobody's going to care about it one bit. So the situation here comes down to New York City, where I think a couple of things came into play. Number one, the 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 candidate Mandani was running in a perfect year for him. Everything fell into place for him. Number one, he had a good message that many young people bought, and looking at the numbers, apparently it was young people who voted for him, especially young women. That's an interesting information. And the other thing going for him is that he had two horrible candidates to run against. I think if there had been a more serious candidate, a candidate more respected by the electorate, I think it's possible. It's very, very possible that somebody could have defeated Mandani, even in a close election. Or it certainly would have been a heck of a lot closer than that election was yesterday. But there wasn't, for whatever reason. The Democrats or Cuomo just couldn't put up a fight. I mean, he got 41% of the vote, which is, not bad, but not good enough to challenge. And the Republican candidate, Sliwa, he got what, 8% of the vote? I mean, the polls were saying that he was going to do a lot better. So it turns out that Mandani won, and he is now the nightmare for the Democrats. And that's because every Democrat in the country is going to have to answer about that. And one thing I will tell you is that you're going to start seeing a lot of disciples of Mandani come up in the Democrat Party. You're going to have a lot more Mandanis in the Democrat Party. They're either going to be running for mayor, which is turning out to be an easy victory in many of these blue cities, as we saw in Minneapolis. Now, in Minneapolis, Mandami's disciple did not win. But again, it was two very liberal candidates running there. I think in Seattle, there was another one. So I think you're going to see many of these also Mandani disciples. They're going to go after establishment Democrats, and you're going to see more primaries as well. So they won. I mean, Mandani won, and they feel good about it, and that's fine. You should feel good when you win. But I think he's a nightmare for the Democrats, and he's going to be the face of the new Democrat Party. The problem is, as we saw with Senator Schumer and even former President Obama, they didn't endorse him. I mean, the senator from New York, majority leader or minority leader in the Senate, the senior senator from New York, did not endorse the candidate for New York City. And he himself is from the New York City area. Then you have President Obama, who spoke with him and said, I can be a sounding board. He didn't endorse him. So I think that tells you the kinds of problems that the Democrats are going to have. I think Mandani's most important decision is going to be regarding the police commissioner. And by the way, speaking of that, we'll be chatting with our good friend Bill Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda. He's from that area, from the New York City area. And we'll get into a lot more of this election tomorrow. But there are some real challenges for Mandani, some real challenges in putting together a very skeptical half of New York City who didn't vote for him. And the police department, those people are not thrilled with him. So he's got a lot to do. He's got a lot of work to do. And let's see how it pans out. But he is going to be a nightmare for the Democrats, believe me. He is going to be a nightmare for the Democrat Party. Then the other election was the one in California, the redistricting election. Again, that went down as I expected. I don't know. I was talking to a friend of mine from LA this morning, and I asked him if there was going to be a court challenge, and he said maybe. I mean, a court challenge within California, not federal courts. And he said maybe, because as I understand, I think they technically violated the state constitution or the state law, because under California law, you have to have a commission create these districts, and they did it out of pure partisan reasons. So that may not be over, that story in California may not be over. But if it is, that means that they are now going to have 5 more Democrats in the House from California, and again 5 more from Texas. So I guess that's going to wash out, and then we'll see what happens with some of the other states that are doing the same thing. So we'll see what happens. But again, the bottom line about the election on Tuesday night is that it pretty much went down as everybody had predicted. And there is one, as I said, the only exception or the only prediction that didn't go right for me was the Attorney General of Virginia, where I really thought Jason Miyares was going to win. But the others, I think, kind of went down not as I wanted, but as most of the experts had predicted. Does it change much of anything? Not really. Not really. Doesn't change anything. Because the only thing that matters on Tuesday night is the election in New York City. That's the only one that we're going to be talking about for several months. And that could be the one that becomes a factor in the midterms. So that's the one. There's a lot of rumors that the shutdown may end now that the election is over. Wouldn't be surprised if that happens. I think the Democrats needed the shutdown in Virginia to get their vote up, probably in New Jersey as well, but especially in Virginia. So I wouldn't be surprised if it all comes down this or shuts down, ends shortly here in the next few days, because it's no longer a political benefit for the Democrats. The election is over and they got what they were looking for. Well, on this day in history, speaking of elections, 1968, President, well, at the time, he was not president, but Richard Nixon was elected president on this day in 1968. It was a three-way race. Richard Nixon, at the time, Vice President Hubert Humphrey, and Governor George Wallace of Alabama. The three of them ran. Wallace in that election actually picked up 5 states. You know, he was not only getting votes, he was getting electoral votes. He picked up 5 states that year. And that probably, according to most experts, that's probably what gave Nixon the election, because it's likely that those southern states would have still voted for Humphrey in 1968. There was a different Democrat Party back then. So Richard Nixon won the 1968 election on this day. It was a very close election in 1968. And of course, 4 years later, he went on to be reelected in huge numbers, 49 states, 60% of the popular vote. And of course, we know what happened in the summer of 74. He had to resign because of the Watergate scandal. So Richard Nixon was elected president on this day in 1968. Thank you for listening. And remember, there's a lot of overreaction about what happened on Tuesday night. And don't fall for it. A lot of overreaction about what happened on Tuesday night. By the way, I also have a post. I'm sorry that I forgot to say this. I also have a post over at the American Thinker today about Mexico violence. Things have gotten pretty violent in Mexico. That's not new. But this week, there was a mayor of a small town, not necessarily a small town, 300,000 people, in Michoacan, who was killed. And it's become a real scandal in Mexico. There are protests. People are pretty angry about it. So as I write in my American Thinker post today, things are going to get difficult for the president of Mexico. There's some real tension in Mexico right now, especially over all of this shooting of politicians and journalists too, are being killed in record numbers. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your comments, and we'll talk to you later. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas.